recording. Eventually, we got Simon Pegg on the podcast. It's not the first time we've heard that, is it?
Joe, I've been called. I'm more like the fat guy. To be fair, from those films, I'll get called John Candy. To be fair, I look like, or I used to look like the third Jedward twin as well. So, to be fair, it's probably the best compliment I've ever had for a long time.
I'm having a look at Simon Pegg here on my phone next to you, and like he could be your dad. Right, okay. Where shall we start here, Rich? Where shall we start?
For me, I think if you're going to have recruitment agency owners listen to this podcast, where I can help those guys really is how you can go about perhaps generating better leads, new leads, maybe a few hints and tips really on what recruiters and agency owners can do so that, new business or content or marketing or social media or whatever it is becomes that little bit easier, because sometimes for a lot of companies it's a struggle.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Before we jump into that, you spent a number of years as a recruiter. Was it like your first proper job?
Yeah, absolutely. Apart from working behind a bar at Students' Union, you can count. That counts as a proper job, right? No. Okay. So, it's exactly that. I think the same route. We all were stuck with debt. And what do you do to clear the debt? You get a sales job as quickly as you can. And then you go on these. I think I went through Pareto Law, placing graduates. And then, before you know it, I originally from Leicester, moved up to Manchester, and then kind of there you are working in recruitment. So it's just it was just a quick way to get rid of your debt. And then before you know it, 10, 15 years later, you're still in and around the industry.
10 years you did with Finley James. That's a long stint, eh?
Yeah. It's, I can't believe it was 10 years. I think they purely tech sales recruitment, and vast majority was perm as well. So I think I learned a lot. I think at the time I didn't realize how much you learn, but essentially when you are selling salespeople to experienced tech salespeople, so like the whole process of selling a salesperson to a salesperson, you end up you do learn quite a lot really. And I didn't realize what I knew was probably quite as valuable as what I thought. So so a long time there.
When, without answering the question for you, because I sell salespeople too, and anytime I do tech sales, it's always interesting to know how far ahead these tech companies are than recruitment companies and how they go about their sales and marketing. While you were in a recruitment company and you were seeing what Salesforce or whoever else you were dealing with, were you like, why are we not doing that? How did the genesis of you moving into being a marketeer happen?
I think it's perhaps recruitment is a funny industry in that there's so much pressure to achieve now, so much pressure and the KPIs and whatever people use. There's so much in terms of having to achieve your goals straight away. And so sometimes I think what tech does and what it does really well is it gives itself time to evaluate, look at what tools are working, look at the systems, game plans, processes, whatever tech is out there. And I think that technology companies, SaaS companies, implement those game plans a lot better than recruiters, because recruiters on the other hand are very, where's the next interview coming from? Have you done 80 calls today? Or have you spoke that my first KPIs were 80 calls, 16 decision makers, and that was it. 5 days a week you get on the phone. Whereas I think technology probably took a step back from that and looked at quality over quantity, and then the tools to support the quality really. And I think that's where recruitment's getting their head around it now. Yeah, absolutely they are.
How far do we have to go? Catch up.
I think it's an ever evolving process. I think there will be, let's face it, 10, 15 years ago, social media wasn't around, was it? Or if it was in its infancy. So there's always going to be something that's going to be changing. There's going to be a new way to contact somebody, and there will be a new way to build up trust and build up rapport with people. God knows what it is, but when that time comes, recruiters, I think, hopefully will kind of go along with the journey a little bit faster than perhaps what they had done.
Can I throw a couple of curveballs at you?
Always.
Okay. All right. It's day one. I've just left a big agency, and I've realized that actually I'm probably not as good as I thought I was. And that database that I was taking for granted was pretty good. And those people around me who were handing me jobs, they're not there anymore. I just got a website, but it's not getting any traffic. Um, I think I've picked a niche. Um, let's say it is tech sales, and I'm thinking of the USA. Might narrow it down. I might narrow down the vertical. What should I do, Rich? How can I go about building this marketing machine that's going to help
I
my
think
recruitment business?
getting rid of, ignoring all the fluffy stuff at the beginning of the whole, why am I getting into this and this, what are your personal values and all that stuff that I think does make a difference.
I have an expensive wife I need to pay for.
Right, that's enough of a values and a driver. Fine, you've got kids as well. So yeah, the first thing you need to do is understand who it is that's going to buy your service and how many people want to buy your service. So say, for example, you are looking at tech companies in the USA. Well, let's face it, there's thousands. There are literally thousands upon thousands of CROs, Chief Revenue Officers, VP Sales, CEOs, depends on what the job titles are. But the first step is to understand or find as many people that will be interested in your service.
How do I narrow it down, Rich?
Well, that goes on your niche and what you're doing it, because the more that you cast your net wider, the difficulty it is to be a specialist. You yourself, your business itself, if you were to become if I was to become a marketing agency that helps everybody, then I lose that little niche ability. So it's probably a bit of an open-ended question in terms of, I personally would stick to a niche and go for that niche. And then if you're not getting the revenue from that, perhaps expand or go at different areas.
So let's say it's cybersecurity sales. It's the vendor world, not the end user. It's East Coast, not West Coast. Or should I narrow down the geography, or am I niching down too much?
I think given the fact that cybersecurity is quite a big market anyway, cyber is quite a big market. It's growing at a rapid rate, and it continues to grow over the next 5-10 years. So I think what I would do is probably start by country first of all. So look at the USA, and then, but because the USA is its own pretty much continent with different time zones, if you're finding that you're spreading yourself too thin, but there's plenty of opportunity there, then you narrow it down to East Coast, West Coast. You could even do it Northeast, Midwest, and West Coast. I suppose it depends on the amount of vacancies that you're able to pull in or generate, I would say.
And now that I think my next step is to decide on the decision makers and on getting their data. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly that. Really, once you found a niche, cybersecurity, every person who is going to buy your service will probably have the job title of CRO. If you're placing salespeople, you're probably going to have CRO, CEO, VP of Sales, or maybe even Director of Sales. I know that in the US they have funny job titles in that they say that they're a sales director, but they could just be having 6 months in sales. So it is a case of research, spotting who it is that you want to do business with. And then I would suggest finding their emails, getting their email addresses and getting them into a CRM system.
Let's take a step back. How do we find the companies? What do we use? What tools?
There are loads of online research tools. So you would look at things like Hoover's, LinkedIn, Crunchbase. There's Angel List. There's any directory really where they're constantly refreshing the companies and then showcasing the companies.
How do I get the right data out of that? How do I do all that quickly?
You might have to put your hand in your pocket and pay for the license.
Okay,
but it'll be worth every penny. So once you put your hand in your pocket and paid for it, You would realistically, if you're talking about salespeople, well, where do salespeople hang out? They're always on LinkedIn. So you'd find the company, get a list of companies, and then you'd find every contact. Realistically, in this instance, you'd look at LinkedIn. I have a LinkedIn recruiter license, and I'm not a recruiter. I have it because it helps my clients to find contacts. So if you're looking to recruit, then buy either Sales Navigator or Recruiter or something like that.
Okay, and then what happens then? I've got this beautiful database. I'm coding it. I'm thinking.
Yeah. Just put your feet up. You don't have to do anything from there on in. That's it. Just check out the bank account and watch the zeros roll in.
Yeah, zero is what I'm looking at right now. We'll make money someday. I promise, Charlotte. Okay, what happens now?
You have to contact them, don't you? People get pissed off.
There's thousands of them. How can I contact them all, Rich?
Well, people get pissed off with recruiters because all they do is say, "I've got this job. Do you want it? I've got this job. Do you want it?" And or the alternative is, "I've got this candidate. Do you want it? I've got this candidate. Do you want it?" And it's the same process every single time. So nowadays, I believe that not only do you have to contact these people with useful information, things that's going to help them. Let's face it, these CROs, they might have problems that recruiters have access to solving. They might want to know who the top salespeople are, what people are paying, what commissions or OTEs or bonuses, variables, whatever it is. Recruiters have a lot of information that hiring managers could do with access to. So give them that information. And at the same time, oh, by the way, I've got this new business sales. One of your problems is you need somebody with new business skills. Well, I've got this person based in New York. Do you want to meet him?
So are you saying you create some form of content that engages with them and then try and create value before you put in a product, or do you do a mixture of both?
Yeah, a mixture of both. I mean, the fastest way to open up a door is the product. In this instance, would be the candidate. That's absolutely the fastest way. But then if at the same time you're backing up your product with useful information and saying, oh, by the way, here's, top 10 companies in New York or whatever it is, whatever their problems might be. And at the same time, when they research you on LinkedIn, all of your posts and everything that you're engaging with is in and around cybersecurity sales in America, then they'll have a look at you and go, "Oh, that guy looks like he knows what he's talking about. So I'm more likely going to engage," rather than, "Oh, I've got this candidate. Do you want to meet it?" And then they research about you, and there's nothing. You don't do anything other than that.
And we only need to send one email, right?
Yeah, it's the fastest way to open a door. It really is. As much as recruiters will rely on the one email, it really does open the doors up quicker.
How many emails do we need to hit them with to get what we need? What is the data telling us?
So, say for example, you've got 1,000 contacts. Realistically, 700 of those will never do business with you. I think they're generally, the numbers are at least 70% will never and not want to do business with you in any way, shape or form. It's quite likely that 10 to 30 will. And as a recruiter, you only need, some recruiters only need one, but realistically, they're the kind of numbers that you need to be playing around with, in that for every 1,000 contacts, 10 people will probably do business with you at some point. Maybe not now, but within the next year or so. I would suggest you need to be contacting them very regularly. So certainly on the outset, if you're going to email all 1,000 people, you'd need probably to send 3 to 5 emails within a couple of weeks to them.
And there's some automation stuff that you use for that. Do you also use like Mailchimp and things like that, or what?
So when it comes to outreach, there's 2 different ways of looking at it. Mailchimp is brilliant, but Mailchimp is brilliant for people that actually have decided to be contacted by you. So if you're putting out content and then they subscribe, you'd have seen it where you subscribe to our newsletter and all that kind of stuff. Mailchimp's really good for that kind of stuff, for sending one email to many at the same time. Yeah. However, if you're opening up a new market, you've just left Robert Walters, you had all that support, and now you've got no support and you've got nobody doing it. Basically, you need to contact 1,000 people to do that in America would be illegal anyway because of the whole Can Spam Act. And so what you would do is do it one by one. So email people one by one, but there are tools that will help you sort of email one by one. So you basically press go, it'll email them, it'll do the follow-up 2 or 3 days later, and then the follow-up after that, and all that kind of good stuff, really.
Okay, all right. Is it fair to say the follow-up is the most important thing?
Yeah, without fail, every time. For example, I'm running new business campaigns for people all the time, and the first email never gets as much traction as the second email, because the second email is, in their mind is always, all right, so he's coming back for more. Is he going to be coming back for a third, fourth, or fifth? So I may as well reply and say either way.
What's your opinion on like video sending videos and stuff like that?
I actually quite like it. I do like it when it's super targeted. You've got to balance up time versus outreach, really, because if you were to make, having tried it myself, if you were to make a 30-second to 1 minute video for 1,000 people, by the time you recorded the video, major mistakes and gone, oh, for God's sake, and I need a drink, and then the kids come running in downstairs, you're probably talking 5 to 10 minutes for each one. Uploading it, sending it over. It's a ball ache. It's a massive ball ache. So I would say video is pretty good when it comes to the ABM, account-based marketing stuff, when you're actually going at 1 or 2 specific target accounts, or it maybe if you're headhunting and if you're headhunting and you've got 10 candidates that you need, then that ultra bespoke approach is a very good way to go about doing it. But if you're doing it en masse, a video, it doesn't work en masse.
But Rich, I'm not really that creative. What should I send these people? Like, how do I know what's going to work?
A candidate will always open up the door. If you're in recruitment and you're not creative, then a candidate is the fastest way to open up the door. And then a follow-up. Then realistically, you don't need to be so creative. This is what the message that people get nowadays is, recruiters need to be marketers. You don't. Recruiters need to be recruiters supported by marketing. So in terms of being creative, I don't think you don't need a fancy down video that's, it might look good, but realistically, people pay you for the candidate. They don't pay you for how good your video is.
And then what happens after this stage? We're done. We're loaded. We've won all the clients.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, again, put your feet up. You're counting the Charlotte's happy. You've got your expensive wife is now satisfied. So it's the same process, really. In that you need each, depending on how the driver is for new business. I believe that you need that each week, each month, each quarter, whatever it is. You need that new business, right? Which companies have entered my market, and who can I approach? After that, you also need to be an existing sort of program or game plan, if you will. And so that is where you're touching on, I use your podcast for as an example. You need to be creating, or some people might want to start creating other content that acts as a way that you look like you know what you're talking about. You might not know what you're talking about, but if you're sharing the views and opinions of
somebody who does, then...
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, if you're sharing the views and opinions of CROs in cybersecurity, then it gives you that credibility, but that's being based on other people's credibility in the industry.
That's why we get big shots like yourself on here. It really...
Simon Pegg, is a busy guy, to be fair. So.
Yes, yeah. What do you feel about like a multi-pronged approach in terms of, so you've kind of got the email stuff here. I take it you're encouraging recruiters to follow the same phone-based stuff that they've always done. What about the LinkedIn game plan for follow-ups? So you're adding a bit more of a personal identification. Have you got any tips around that side of it?
Yeah. So when you're using an email platform, you can see who's opened it, and so you can always see if there's one person that's opened it 10 times, then realistically I'd probably be putting in a call, or during that video message that you said before, I'd probably use in something like I know a lot of companies will have Odro, so using something like Odro. If you've not got Odro, use something like Video.
Big shout out to Audro, who've recently become a sponsor of the Recruiter Startup Podcast. Thank you very much.
Hey, nice plug that was, wasn't
it? Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, exactly. That at that point, when you know that somebody's interacting with your emails, then you'd send out a message, a video message like that, and you make it super bespoke. So yeah, absolutely. The people that you want to contact are hanging around on LinkedIn. So making sure that the content that you're putting out there, if you can't create the content yourself, then share content that's going to be useful to them.
Why are we not all doing this?
Time, ability, knowledge, desire, skill. Probably one of many reasons, really, I'd say. I think I've never known an industry where one job has to do so many things. Recruiter has to not only source contacts, they have to contact them, they have to sell, they have to really negotiate, chase up the invoices, create their own images, use Canva or whatever, so all of a sudden a recruiter becomes a sales, marketing, accountant, negotiator, customer success, and all this kind of stuff. And so
a lot, yeah.
It's like it's death by tasks, and so people will fall into what they're interested in, which sometimes is content, sometimes is new business, sometimes is let's just speak to the people I know. So it just depends on the individual.
And Rich, we give you access to our independent and startup recruiter group, the Dinghy, and the feedback's really good. So I decided I had to get a slice of whatever magic you have, and we've had a look at doing this for our scale business, for the podcast, and for the leadership network. So why don't we get you on in a few weeks' time, and we can discuss where we're at with it, and just demonstrate to everybody how this stuff actually works.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm speaking to a few of the people in your team, and it's a process that I absolutely believe in. I can't. It's a weird thing. It's like, so you want new business and you want clients, and I'm here to help you contact as many people with the best messages as possible. It's like a no-brainer, really. So yeah, absolutely. I'd love to sort of go through the journey with you and tell you what we can do, how we can work it, how we can improve, all that kind of good stuff.
Our first chat, you did the demo with me, and I'm like, oh no, this isn't new information. I'm just not capable of putting this all into something. And so it's so really appreciated, and I'm excited to see the results, because I'm a big believer in put either a digital process or a human process in place, and you just know that it runs itself, and then you move on to the next thing. And that's what this does, so it's it's great. Thanks very much for coming on. We will get you on in a few weeks' time, and we'll probably get into a bit more of the detail on everything. We'll see if we can get a few extra questions from the different groups within the leadership network for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, thank you very much for having me on. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Great stuff. Richard Gibbard.